I remember as a little kid leaving Litchfield, we get all 9 of the Kleises into a station wagon, drive into St. Cloud, and see that name, your name as a kid, Kleis in neon lights was really a cool thing. I remember my dad telling me the story of, two brothers that came over from Germany, 2 Kleises, that one settled in the Eden Valley Watkins area and one in St. Cloud. And it was Pete Kleis, the son of them, of the one from St. Cloud, that came to St. Cloud with a quarter in his pocket, and he started at the Kleis Motel and the Dairy Queen and another motel on the other side of town. Knowing that story and seeing your name as a kid was a huge deal. When the Kleis Motel opened, motels were a unique thing in Minnesota and the country for that matter, and it was really it was a place where a lot of people held their honeymoons. They would spend coming into St. Cloud, they'd get married and hold a honeymoon there. Of course, it was also a place that John F. Kennedy, JFK, was going to be coming to St. Cloud to give a speech. And so, of course, Secret Service had to come in advance and make sure that everything was proper and in order for security. This was a motel at that time that not only you had your honeymoon, but it was fit for a president to actually stay at. Of course, as it faded and worn, it went from, being a place where you'd have a president to being a place where there was, criminal activity. In fact, there was a fire once. It became kind of it became much worse later on because I had people, when I was in the state Senate, said, I can't believe our state senator owns that meth lab. Yeah, that's what it was. That eventually there had some criminal activity. Now, of course, I never owned it at all, ever. But even our relatives, even the Kleis, didn't own it except for those first few years. Pete Kleis, when he built that motel, he built it and sold it shortly after that. But, when you have a big neon sign like that, they kept the Kleis Motel name, even though it was only Kleis actually owning it for a brief period of time after it was built. The motel eventually, ran its course, so the motel is gone. The sign, though, lives on as a legacy. Anybody coming into St. Cloud saw that Kleis sign. I mean, when St. Cloud, where the motel was, and of course the Rock Stadium that used to be there and the Dairy Queen, that was the edge of town. So, St. Cloud being a regional center, people would come to town. One of the first things they would see, and again, growing up as a kid, seeing that Kleis Motel, it was there for a long period of time. The sign lives on. It's the history over that period of time. After the Kleis Motel left, there, of course, in the Dairy Queen there, the Dairy Queen made way for a CVS pharmacy. When the Kleis Motel left, there was a Mexican restaurant there for a while and a burger place. You had Rocks, you had Mexican Village too. And those places, even after that, are gone, and now those places are gone. Of course, the Dairy Queen is there, but it moved a little bit, actually closer to where the Kleis Motel sat in the earlier days. So yeah, it's changed significantly, but it really keeping the heritage of keeping alive that what used to be there. That sign, I think, is an important way of remembering and also understanding the growth that the city has had over that period of time. So as the town continued to grow, you created these types of motels on the outskirts where people came in. They saw a place to stay right away without having to come into the community. So the community in this area changed pretty significantly over a period of time. Now it's kind of in that middle area, what used to be on the edge of town.
It's a beautiful morning. Nice morning.
It is. It's gorgeous, sunny. Because of the sun, doesn't seem as cold, so that's not bad at all.
I'm tired.
Sorry.
Want this to be done.
talking to Eric, who's been working on this and planning actually the move of this sign, working with scenic signs. There's a lot that goes into that. I mean, the size of the building, the sizes of the door. It's a challenge when you're going through this thing, even from the beginning of the sign, making sure you lift it up without breaking all of the neon lighting that goes around there, or even bending the metal. Not replaceable, and so some really difficult. Going through that process from lifting the sign, making sure that doesn't, collapse on somebody, to getting it through the door.
That roll's much better.
The building obviously was made just right. The door just actually had to be lifted up just a little bit. Eric used a pull just to pull that out so that the lift could bring that outside the building.
Cables on there. We're not going very far. May break one of the neon bulbs or something, but that's a worst case scenario.
Right.
I'm gonna take these roads and I'm gonna go back super slow.
Yep.
Like I'm gonna put my four ways on and I'm gonna
Yep.
just take her slow.
Yep. Yeah, but we're gonna hope not. We're gonna hope that nothing.
It's just that I felt it in the
the
in the
arrows
road.
cannot. Those are old mercury tubes, and I don't think the glass is available anymore. So
Okay.
we don't want them to break.
Now we'll take it nice and slow.
Okay.
So
All right. I mean, that's all we can do. Right?
yeah, that's all I can do is take her as slow
Right.
as I
No,
can.
I totally get it.
So
Yeah.
Now you're going through a road that any little pothole or any little movement could hurt the sign or break one of the bulbs. Fortunately, during that journey, it made it all the way through. And then, of course, now you got to go through another door, a door that's behind me here, getting that through and making sure and hoping that the sign and the brackets and everything match up exactly.
you go ahead and open up the door. We'll get the.
Okay.
It'll get a little chilly in here, but
Oh, fine. maybe an upper pulling up.
Never say works slick. It is nice. This is truly impressive.
That thing is amazing.
So let's head over here.
Feels like it wants to go.
Put these pieces of board.
Through all of the pre-planning, it couldn't have worked better.
All right, here's to see if I'm good at welding, guys. Good place for me to be while we're testing my welds, huh?
And then going through the process of actually turning on the sign. That's the first time the sign has been fully lit up entirely. Probably even when the sign was out in front of the Kleis Motel, not all the bulbs were working. In fact, if you can see, only the M was lit up. They're here now, all of the letters, just as it originally was put there, probably when it was installed. Everything was working well, and it's a great testament to, again, that piece of history that stood along that road, along the Rock Stadium for all those years in storage, and now actually lit up again as part of this display. A lot of these signs and a lot of these stories were forgotten, but preserving those pieces, the signs, gave an opportunity, or gives an opportunity, to tell the stories around the sign. It's not so much the neon sign, it's not so much the wooden sign or the Eiffel Tower sign. It's the fact of having the preservation and the ability to understand. The preservation of the signs led to the retelling of the stories, and really that's part of the history, the stories of the Kleis Motel. You know, the Kleis Motel was never my hotel. It was not owned by Dave Kleis or, my immediate family, but it was a relative. And it was, it was the son of an immigrant who came from Germany into St. Cloud, and the Kleis name there. But, and I never owned it. If I was going to take credit, I would have taken credit for the early years, but I never owned the motel. But the history and the legacy still exists, and it's something, it's part of St. Cloud's growth, and it's part of St. Cloud's story. And it's, quite frankly, it's part of my family's story, not mine personally, but the relatives and that immigration and that entrepreneurship that really helped build our community. And in 1985, the motel was still there, so I did stay once. Even though I had a place to stay in town, I just needed to stay at the Kleis Motel. But it was in its latter years, so I wish I would have been, there in the early years. Of course, I wasn't born during those earlier years, but in the latter years, it showed its age. But if you're having the same last name as the sign that's out on the marquee, it was important to stay there. So I remember I rented a room. In fact, I think even then, I don't think I paid more than $20 for a room or $25 for a room. But it was some place that wanted to partake in that piece of history. If I could go back and talk to Pete Kleis, and it's somebody actually, when St. Cloud celebrated its sesquicentennial 150th anniversary, I was as mayor at that time, myself and all the city council members dressed up as characters of St. Cloud's history. I chose Pete Kleis because Pete Kleis started the Kleis Motel and the Dairy Queen. It was a big part. He was a business person. Really was somebody that was very influential in the community. If I could talk to him, I would tell him, thanks for creating that legacy. In fact, it's one of those things, as somebody who ran for state senate and mayor, and had a bunch of lawn signs all over the place, the very first lawn sign I actually had was the Kleis Motel. Because people know the name because they saw that sign there for all those years. So even though I grew up in Litchfield and my cousins were here in St. Cloud, people thought, I had they had those roots. I had the roots because I had a great uncle who started a hotel, started a Dairy Queen, started a business and a legacy. So, you know, I would say thank him. You know, I played his role during our sesquicentennial because he was a pretty influential point in St. Cloud. If you look at the businesses and you see, that's why preserving the signs are important. The businesses in this area really, you know, really built the community, and they really gave the identity. And in the case of the Kleis Motel, this was an identity. If you're coming in from anywhere in greater Minnesota, and St. Cloud is a regional draw, so St. Cloud always brought people from, you know, I grew up in the small town of Litchfield. You went to the big city, and St. Cloud was the big city. And what did you see? The first neon lights. I mean, in fact, if you think of all the music from the 50s and the 60s, they always talk about neon lights in the big city. Well, the neon light was the Kleis Motel coming into the St. Cloud city.
It's difficult when you want to keep that history and keep it all intact, but to move that, you know, 4 months later into what now is the exhibit.